You know, I've still never played the original Saints Row.
I'm actually excited about this, having played so much Saints Row and never knowing the origin. Wow, how incredibly grounded. Those guns look physically possible, but nobody's flying? Ah, getting a little context to the Saints' name. Their headquarters is an abandoned church. I do remember the commercials on cable television.
You ready for this, player?
Yeah, you are playa. How meta. Because you haven't become the boss yet. And the plot is what has become standard for the franchise. The Saints are trying to come up and control the underground through gang violence. There are 3 already established gangs to take out, voiced by famous people. There's the Vice Kings, led by John Coffey, Michael Clark Duncan, may he rest in peace. The West Side Rollers leader is Kill Bill Bill, David Carradine, may he rest in peace. I didn't recognize any of the voices from Los Carnales leaders, although my ears are only tuned for Cheech Marin and Danny Trejo. Huh, that's great. The gangs are Black, Asian, and Hispanic. Good thing I'm white, so I can complete this rainbow of diversity. Also, voicing a femme fatale, I heard Mia Kunis, may she rest her hiney on my face! Leading the Saints is Julius Little, who is obviously Keith David, or as we around the house call him, I didn't take it out for air. Aw, it's Johnny Gat. He's adorable! With that flat shading and textures designed for 720p. Saints Row was an important milestone, and not just that it was an alternative to Grand Theft Auto, there was plenty of that. But it was the first on that generation, and with the innovation of GPS-like guidance, something that is hard to imagine we ever lived without. I just don't think anyone expected it was going to come from the Red Faction guys. Okay, inherited from GTA, top button gets in the car. Why am I not moving? I'm just shooting. Oh, this is back when the buttons moved the car. Right, I remember those times. Kinda makes sense that, A is for acceleration and B is for brake. Okay, B doesn't do anything. X is for brake, or rather back up, and left trigger is the E-brake. Gonna take a while to change that habit. I'm ready to take over the city, but first, oh no, the respect system. Mission currency. You have to complete side missions to give you access to real missions, and this ain't a one-to-one relationship. The only positive I can find is I like talking to the individuals for the side missions, an actual fully animated, funny cutscene, instead of, say, Kinsey calling in to dump all the information like Saints Row 3 or 4. I elected to play most of the in-car brothel missions, maybe some derby, and all the racing levels because I could mostly rely on the AI cars hitting a tree. And for those developers who think that adding racing missions is a good idea, no, it's really not. I understand it's tempting. All the elements are here. As the Medford Committee once said, well, we have the engine. And if you really have to, restart option would be real nice. I got to level 36 and stopped, because I figured that should cover the 36 parts of the city to control. I was right. Then I could play all the fun, third-person, reckless driving, creative problem-solving, shooting anyone, not wearing my colors, you know how it goes. With no difficulty option, and mission trees can be played in any order, most objectives don't really ramp up, until you reach the gang bosses. Then it becomes unreasonable. And not so much of resource limiting or strategy, it's, well, let me just show you. I have to drive my car and shoot the cars on the back of the trailer. Got that? Drive, which is steering and maintaining speed, and shoot, which is pulling the trigger. Oh, well, we didn't really account for turns of the road, so aim has to be constantly adjusted. Okay, I'll just malform my hand and bring down the index finger to the right stick. No real positive message, street violence in gang territory, the love of money causing all sorts of problems, but it's just fun to play out these gang fantasies. Moving forward in the franchise, the shining star, Saints Row 2. And to think, if Sadie hadn't recommended the game for some online co-op, I would have missed the series entirely. Let's just pop it in. Oh, now this all makes a lot of sense. The prison guard banter actually means something. Break out ourselves, break out Johnny Gat, experience the occasional locking air. Good stuff. That respect system again. Alright, I'm gonna have to call some bullshit on my past self. This respect system is a real drag. The premise is always funny, ignite cars and other people by riding a flaming ATV, bodyguard a celebrity by throwing fanatics to the deaths, willingly run into traffic, and the shocking classic, spraying sewage. The particle effects really solidify the situation. But anything beyond the second level of activity becomes, what's the term I just used? Unreasonable. I guess I have some special attachment to Saints Row 2. Remember playing it night after night, setting up this crazy-ass game while listening to the 3 different versions of Bang Pow Boom. So, am I gonna have to rename that theory? What, the GTA 4 Bang Pow Boom theory? Now, once you clear that massive 45 levels of respect ceiling, that's when the real magic starts. 45 missions of starting crap with gangs that weren't bothering you in the first place. As I mentioned long ago, the cartoony, ridiculous gang combat was enhanced by the fact that these shootouts can happen anywhere. If they don't like you, they'll snipe you in broad daylight with a white rifle. D12! Missions are done in fun, recreational places. It was less urban sandbox and more suburban sandbox. Ugh, I suck. Everything just seemed better in this game, especially coming off of Grand Theft Auto 4. And even Volition understands that part of the boon for Saints Row 2 was Grand Theft Auto 4 tripping over their own dick. I remember them saying, "We know you're gonna play GTA 4, but when you're done pissing into the wind, you can come back and play a real game." With as much porting that Deep Silver has published, with all those different flavors, I'm just a bit surprised they haven't brought over the first two. Is it legal issues or difficulty with the engine? Tracking the ownership of Saints Row has become so confusing, I've given up. My Xbox One says Koch Media. I don't know. What I do know is Koch is German for chef. Yep. On the other hand, this engine is pretty ancient. The map screen obviously had to primarily account for the 4:3 screen ratio. Famous voices in Saints Row 2? Yeah! Michael Dorn is the leader of the Brotherhood, which is really funny because I now work with a guy named Michael Dorn.
And that is his real name.
Michael Rappaport returns, and Jay Moore is the evil Ultor exec, which again is funny because I used to confuse one guy with the other, and here they are talking to each other. Like in the past, I couldn't tell Dane Cook and Ryan Reynolds apart, and then they were both in that movie Waiting. Like when I thought Luke Evans was Orlando Bloom, and then they were on screen together in the Battle of Five Armies. Like when I honestly thought Tobey Maguire was in Spider-Man and That 70s Show, until Topher Grace was in Spider-Man 3, and I realized, oh, it's two different guys. Saints Row the Third. Clever title, not as good as Saints Row 2. But why? I don't exactly know. It's practically the same game. In another city, overrun with gangs, and you take over. It's not so much technical, it's more of a feeling. It was either a new or improved engine that somehow didn't look as good, felt clunky, Pierce was no longer hard, Shondi was no longer a laid-back slut, and Johnny Gat gets iced at the very beginning of the game. He's part of the reason I played these games. That aside, it's still pretty entertaining. They got Burt Reynolds, may he rest in peace. By the time Saints Row 4 rolled into my life, the afterglow of Saints Row 2 had really worn off. What are you doing? Yeah, my favorite part was probably Rowdy Roddy Piper, may he rest in peace. It's really funny, but when you fly through the ceiling that hard, the wheels tend to fall off. You're the president, aliens attack, you have superpowers. I just wanted to be in a gang and run the streets. Agents of Mayhem is part of the same universe, as I believe it's a continuation of Gat Out of Hell. That's all I really know, aside from it didn't sell very well, which was very bad news for Volition. Hey, I did my part. I picked up a copy for Xbox One at the Toys R Us going out of business sale. Oh, I think it's done installing. I recall this reboot was initially planned to be released back in February 2022, but was delayed for quality. Now, understanding Volition's past work, it's kind of like blaming Transformers 2 poor dialogue on the writer's strike. It's Transformers. I don't think anybody noticed the difference. Wow, I just realized I attacked Revenge of the Fallen in my original Saints Row 2 video. I've been at this far too long. Hey, all graphics to the right, am I right? This is done in Uncharted style, because I already forgot the Latin term for it, where you start near the end of the story. I do the thing to create a character. I'll slide it to the right. I'll slide it to the right. Yeah, girl. I'll slide it to the right. What I'm saying. I'll slide it to the right. And this is the result. Then we jump back to the past, and most of my creation is covered with armor. Ah, what's the deal? You play a wage slave working for a paramilitary group, Marshall, and wouldn't you know it, that's gang number 1. They are akin to Ultor in previous games. The task is to bring in a notorious criminal, and being very good at this job, you're very bad. After you punch the clock and get a ceremonial bitch out, you get the option to redo character customization, and I opted for it. What am I trying to prove with all sliders to the right? This is freakishly distracting, and the voice sounds like a female putting on a male voice, and very bad acting. Look, just generic male voice, and I'll pick Hayden Christensen's cousin. Then we are introduced to the pre-gang lineup. Eli is, well, a nerd. Nina is the requisite girl mechanic, and with ties to Los Panteros gang. They are akin to Los Carnales. And most interesting is Kevin, never wearing a shirt and affiliated with the Idols gang. They are, I invented the term Daft Punk anarchist for another video, but I think that effectively sums it up here. While this circle of friends are well written and have personalities that can interact humorously, none of them really stand out in the way that Julius Little or Johnny Gat did. Although, I believe the waffle-obsessed Kevin is supposed to be the spiritual successor to Johnny Gat.
So make yourself a fucking waffle.
I'll complain about character development, but could I do any better? No. I have a future version of myself that is somehow from the past. Yeah, I think he's playing Second Son right now. The party of four pull a robbery together to make rent, but everybody's involvement in the different gangs seems to be a parabolic conflict of interest, and getting an alliance between them is not a straight path. One of the first story missions is you working for Marshall against Los Panteros, and side note, it is a hard ripoff of Fury Road. As for the Saints Row gang, they kind of Deus Ex Machina their way into that name, but at least a reason was provided. Much ado has been made about the new location for Saints Row, Santo Ileso, a parody of Las Vegas. Even a British correspondent for IGN said it was Reno.
A well-observed riff on Reno, Nevada.
Because he obviously doesn't understand that there's a difference between the two cities. I know nothing about London or Manchester, but I understand that they're not the same place. Well, there are a few Reno things. The prospector at the very beginning, that guy's real. One of the bridges is a dead-on Virginia Street bridge. The arch, obviously. But it can't be Reno. The dead giveaway is palm trees. Palm trees can't grow in Reno because it gets too cold in the winter. Reno 911? That wasn't even filmed in Reno. That's LA. Pickle and Peanut claim to be in East Reno, but in reality, East Reno is more commonly known as Sparks, Nevada. And the forever joke is, if you get high in Reno, you'll see sparks. It is a parody of Las Vegas, but keep in mind, every video game in Las Vegas is a parody of Las Vegas. You know, MGM Resorts International is not going to allow their brand to be the backdrop to violence. Call of Duty Ghosts wasn't really in the Luxor, just an equivalent. All of this is sectioned off into El Dorado, because in reality, the Las Vegas Strip is not in Las Vegas. It's in Paradise, Nevada. Outside of this area, there are elements that are closer to Los Angeles. Outside of all of that is the dry, rocky terrain typical of the American Southwest. Deep Silver and Volition tout that this is the biggest Saints Row yet, but with that, there is a lot of nothing. Of course, there are some sparse settlements out there that remind me of Tonopah, Amargosa Valley, and Wells, Nevada. Ever heard of those places? Yeah, well, try not to think about them. It'll make you weep. Typical to Saints Row, I'm attacking activities first. Get all that stuff out of the way so I can coast to the end. This is for XP, and graciously once per location. Something I liked about the later Saints Rows. The first one I came across is Atcha, rating businesses poorly in the true internet fashion, unnecessary bile and hatred. And the gang that protects the business comes after you. This is good. This is funny. Get it? I do. I would like to think of myself as a student of humor, and there's a lot of referential humor in Saints Row, which is effective, but the laziest form. I know this because I am guilty. Just stick around long enough, and there is plenty of parody mixed in, and parody is divine humor. Another activity early in the game is taking out antennas, and the way to get from relay to relay is flying. I admit, I have mixed feelings here. Taking over the city is done by way of purchasing and planting businesses, thereby bringing in more activities. This is how some classics return, like insurance fraud and mayhem. You will really want to do these to increase your cash flow, as denoted in this live updating menu screen. I have been known to leave the PS5 running at the screen while I'm out of the room loading up the dishwasher. I'm just joking. I don't have a dishwasher. That's some hoity-toity rich folk stuff. There are some businesses like transporting toxic barrels and getting a bonus if they all arrive intact. I had a genuine smile doing this. This is the correct balance of crazy, absurd, and silly. This is Saints Row, and it's not as tortured as repeatedly picking up Johns and hearing random disjointed voice clips. If you see a truck on the way to another truck, just take that one. Speaking upon the subject, there is one aspect of Nevada culture that Saints Row didn't capitalize upon. Brothels! It seemed like it would be second nature for the franchise. Although, when I really think about it, what exactly could they do with legal prostitution? And to clear up further misconception, prostitution is not legal in all of Nevada. Specifically, not in Clark or Washoe County. the only counties that matter. But all you had to do was cross a little county line, and you could get the job done. I took every cent I made from the businesses and upgraded the guns first. This makes enemies fall much easier, like they are the walking bags of raspberry juice in Saints Row 2. Real easy to kill in that game. I'm ready to call this iteration of Saints Row great. And it's not even for the main story. It gets a little sideways at the end and motivations aren't really clear. Nah, it's great because of a little side story called Dust Moot. Dust Moot is a large big event in Santo Ileso, and it is the funniest plot progression in all the franchise history. It begins with Eli geeking out and trying to get the boss involved reluctantly, and eventually reaches the point where everyone gets involved and really into it. Their interactions, terminology, and nerd rage is real, and it is hilarious. Dust Moot is the perfect plot line to build DLC from, but I also don't want DLC for it because it capped off and ended perfectly. I mean, I really do want DLC for the game because, can't you tell? I'm trying to be in the DLC like my Destructoid brethren. Come on, Volition. I practically live here. I'll do it for free. I'll pay you. I feel bad that I haven't really taken the time to listen to all the radio stations in the driving games that followed Grand Theft Auto 3. It has to be so much work putting them together. Did Saints Row 4 have radio stations? I only remember being in a car for about 8 seconds. Well, in this Saints Row, at some point I jumped into a car, yes, it retained that awesome move, and I heard something peculiar. Is that cloud connected? In Flames is in Saints Row! That is just bonus points! Other bonuses, you can control a car mid-air, like Excite Truck, to land it properly. Trees are not a hindrance to driving. Thank you, Big V. Special bonus, a blast core mission with a front loader, not backlash. So many years have passed, and though open world urban games aren't as ubiquitous as before, we still have a few with their hats in the ring. And lest we not forget why we played them, why we were initially attracted to the concept. A little something our souls cry out for. Something called...
Dicking around, dicking around, dicking around, dicking around.
Oh, and lest we not forget that this is Volition's work, and the experience isn't complete without a few crashes. I'm being accused of partisan bias in these reports, so just to be fair and balanced, here's one from the other side. And surprisingly, only 2 full crashes with this game. I am sad that this Saints Row was killed by other critics, because, issues and all, I thought this was one of the better games in the franchise. And now, Volition has been placed under Gearbox. For what? Are we expecting them to turn the screws and make Volition put out a game that isn't glitched all to hell? I gotta say, I'm turning the corner on this one. The legacy of Saints Row bugs were funny, then painful, and now they're back to funny. So... Well, that sounds like the logical conclusion. Alright, hang the jersey from the rafters, boys. The ice slide dicking around joke has been retired. Oh, did you notice that it never brought up driving mechanics? Yeah, because there's no problem. It's a good time. It's good that Volition gave up on the infamous gameplay, well really Infamous gave up on Infamous, and we once again have a worthy Saints Row. welcome home.
Fun!
You mean heaven? That's up there.
So that must be...
Yep, that's Reno.
We get married. Right now. Rena's only a few hours away. We could get married in 10 minutes in Nevada.
No way. No bride of mine is gonna be married in some cheap, tacky place like Reno. We're going to Las Vegas.
Well, at least Zach Morris knows the difference. And there's also a casino by the name of El Dorado, and that Volition logo animation. Now, that thing with the bullet cigar, well, it's not in Reno, but it is in Transformers 4.
I got a bad desire.